Gaming on mobile devices has certainly improved by leaps and bounds over the last years. Even mid-range phones are powerful enough to run games that would have been exclusively console-bound in the past. There are also plenty of wonderful console ports on both Android and iOS. Everything about gaming on mobile is pretty great, except when it comes to the controls. Since smartphones and tablets don't have physical buttons, the only interface is a touch screen. That's perfectly okay for games that have been designed for touch or are in a genre that works well with it. The, now sadly gone, Infinity Blade games and Civilization V are both good examples of this. However, there are many great games on mobile that are simply awkward to play using touch controls. This is where iOS really shines, thanks to Apple's MFI or Made for iOS standard. This is a set of minimum requirements published by Apple for makers of iOS gamepads. If a game and a controller both support the MFI standard, then it will work perfectly. On Android, controller support is much more fragmented, with some games supporting one brand or standard and other games supporting something else. So which games on iOS are good enough to justify buying an MFI controller? We've picked 5 excellent titles that benefit so much from using a controller, you won't ever want to go back to touch. Sure, there are games like KOTOR that are both excellent games and have MFI controller support. However, their touch controls are so good that you don't really gain anything from using a controller. We haven't included those games in this list for that reason. Grid Autosport. Grid Autosport is a milestone mobile game for a few reasons. The most striking is the game's graphical presentation. This is almost exactly the same game we played on console and PC. While graphical fidelity certainly had to be toned down a little, the game certainly looks as good or better than the previous generation of home consoles such as the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. An incredible feat considering that it runs on a passively cooled phone or tablet. Playing the game with touch controls is however a real chore. It's borderline impossible to achieve the precise driving you need to progress. Change over to a gamepad however and suddenly you'll be in the groove. While Grid may be a little on the pricey side, it's absolutely packed with content. Featuring 100 cars and 100 tracks, you definitely get value for money, but without a gamepad we couldn't recommend spending the cash. Get it here. Rush Rally 3, our second game, is also a racing title, but it's not the graphical bonanza that Grid offers.